Hey guys, time to take a deeper dive into the Zenith Porthole set. I did a triage video on it some months ago. We know the picture tube is bad, and we know it's a 16 EP4, which is unfortunate for a few reasons. One, only Zenith used them, and they have an odd deflection angle. I think it's 60 degrees. And they only use it in some of their sets. And they're almost always bad. Replacements are non-existent. But I recently discovered there's an all-glass picture tube with the same deflection angle, the 16DP4. And I was able to secure a used one at a recent TV convention. It is listed as a possible substitute, but it will require some mechanical modifications because the metal cone one requires a plastic ring around it to insulate it, and the high voltage connector is different. Mounting is going to be a little different. But the overall dimension, the overall length, the deflection angle for the yoke, the base pinout, all that's the same. So I hope it'll work. But I also haven't pulled this chassis out, so I don't know what condition it's in. I know some stuff has happened to this set over the years. We took a quick look at it before. So there's been a throw switch added. I think that's to switch between internal and external antenna. We do have the back, which is great because it uses an oddball AC interlock. We need to replace the power cord, but the plug and socket are there. And that's all I know. Oh, sorry, and I know so this is a 2-chassis version, which is better. The Porthole I restored last year was a hybrid, sort of hot chassis, sort of had a power transformer. Weirdness. This has a full-on conventional power supply with a ton of separate chassis down below, which is cool. So we can recap and restore the power supply on its own, and then do the TV chassis, which will be a little bit lighter because it doesn't have the transformer mounted on it and so on. The power supply has had some work done to it. They installed a new electrolytic and just wrapped electrical tape around it to the one next to it to secure it. So, not the greatest repair, which makes me a little nervous. On the plus side, I also have a Zenith Porthole I got years ago that's also unrestored, also has a dead 16 EP4. But I believe it's all original. So if I need to, I can use that for a reference. But I also have the factory service info. So let's get to it. I'm missing the original knobs, or I should say the owner is. But there's just two we need to pull off from the front. Take a couple screws off the back. And probably some chassis bolts down below. And then we'll slide it out and see what we got to work with. Well, it turns out there were no chassis bolts installed. I think what was keeping it from sliding out is the knobs. Because this one is really, really stuck on there. It's a channel knob. I got some penetrating oil on it right now. While we wait for that to work, we can take a look at the controls a little bit more. Now, I was worried that a bunch of the original knobs were missing. I think we're just missing half of one knob, so it's not so bad. So that is the original channel knob, and this is the original outer knob from the other side. We're just missing the inner knob on this guy. If you ever take one of these apart, most Zenith models have a switch in the front to go between zoom, full screen, and letterboxed. Take those screws out because this is wired to the chassis. When you pull the chassis out, if you don't undo this, the wires are going to rip out of it, so be very careful of that. I really dig this particular model. Zenith of the models like this that have these two doors that swing down, because they have these cool prisms here, and there are lights inside. This will illuminate the channel number, and that one will illuminate the volume. I think the width of the lighted area changes with the volume. Just kind of a neat feature. So, behind this, if you've ever seen this before, there is a gigantic, a ridiculously comically large tuner, which takes an enormous amount of force to change channels on. Consequently, there's a pretty hefty shaft coming out of this, and this is a beefy knob, and they are fused quite strongly on there. I've tried the trick of wrapping a rag around it and pulling. I even got a flat flat-bladed screwdriver and put a padded piece behind it and got some really good mechanical advantage and tried to pop it off. No luck. So hopefully the penetrating oil will help. I really don't want to damage anything, but man, that is stuck on there. Oh yes, yes, with the help of that penetrating oil and the big flat-bladed screwdriver, it started to move. So it was metal on metal. I thought maybe it was the plastic had shrunk, but no. It's that inner piece locking into that. So, fantastic. Now we can pull the chassis out. Boy, even with the separate power supply chassis and it being a lighter metal cone CRT, that's still pretty darn heavy. And something else you really need to remember to do is disconnect the speaker. I almost yanked the wires out of that sucker. And there she is. And there's a comically large tuner. Unlike the one I restored, I had to replace a broken fine-tuning dial cord. They moved it up front, and it's intact, I'm happy to say. And there's a channel number thing, and here is that switch that you don't want to rip out. Yeah, it turns. Oh, and there's how the volume goes, so it actually has numbers on it. So neat. So somehow with this light bulb and that prism, you see those numbers up front. Can't wait to see it all lit up. And it looks like it's a rebuild. Maybe Jefferson Tube, New Jersey, something like that. Alright, let's tip it over, see what's underneath. Are you ready? Here we go. I like what I see. I like what I see. What do you think, Jupes? Yeah, run away. Good move. So it looks to be all original. Also looks to be a lot of work. Boy, there's a lot of sand-coated power resistors. I see at least 5. And they're all miserable, corroded, flaking. And then a whole lot of bumblebee caps. Both the black, traditional looking ones and these grayish looking ones or tan. Those guys, those are not power resistors, those are encapsulated paper caps. At least it's roomy. And those are the infamous paper caps masquerading as mica caps. I am pretty darn sure. There's a chassis mounted power resistor. And I think those are more caps mounted to the back for some reason. Oh, and that guy. What is that guy? Too big for vertical output transformer. That's probably that guy. It's filter choke? Maybe. Why wouldn't they put that on the main chassis? Filament supply for just the damper tube? Maybe. Looks too big for that too. It's probably a filter choke. We'll find out. But yeah, man, it's gonna be some work. Odd looking thing there. I guess it's a choke. Audio output transformer up there. Probably a blocking transformer in the middle of the screen there. Zenith did things their own way, so it's a little bit different from your more mainstream sets. Oh, that's the with coil. They mounted up front so you can slide the core. Probably more important on the porthole type set than your usual set where they'd bury that control in the back somewhere. Because I really wanted you to fill up that circle. Alright. It's going to be fun. So, we want to replace the CRT. I was taking a look at this. It's kind of weird. It looks like they painted the cone blue for some reason. I've seen them red, and that indicates the rebuild. I'm guessing that's why they painted it blue, some type of coating system. And then it's got this collar around it that must be going to the high voltage. Oh yeah, and it's on these ceramic insulators. So that's the kind of stuff we got to change to use the all glass version. High voltage is not going to connect there. We got a traditional button with a high voltage wire going to it that we'll need to install and remove this stuff. Wasn't until I get the CRT out, I just had to take these 2 screws out to loosen this up. And they came right out the front. So, with the old and with the new, I already know just from briefly attempting to install the glass one, it's not going to work as is. This is up too high. So, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. Depends how much of a difference it is. I'll just remove this so the glass can settle down in here. I do have some rubber stock that I can cut up if I just need like that much. No big deal. I can just lay a couple strips down there to get it up, and that's typically what you'd find in one of these sets anyways to support the CRT. We certainly don't want this energized. So yeah, here's the flyback high voltage rectifier, high voltage lead. Just goes right to this. This entire piece of metal was energized to 14,000 volts or so. And giant ceramic insulating stands there to keep it off the chassis. Well, this is unexpected. I cleaned off the old metal cone CRT a bit and noticed it has a shiny getter. Now, if this had gone to air, so to speak, meaning the glass metal seal either here or around the front edge had failed and air got inside, if that was the case, the getter would have reacted with the air and gone milky white or transparent. So I got it on CRT tester. And you know what? It's testing fairly good. Now, I have to go back and watch what tester I used. I probably used my B&K 440 that's under my CR70, and it seems to have gone wonky. I tested a Zenith Flashmatic with it the other day, and the readings made no sense. I tried it again with the CRT, and again I got readings that made no sense. So I think that tester has developed a flaw, a fault. So I got it on my CR70. Now at first it was pretty dead. I had to goose this, meaning I did elevated filament voltage, and I did use the auto restore function, which is not a rejuvenation really. It just sort of gently pulses a little bit to the maximum specs, or pushes a filament a little bit. Anyways, yeah, right now I'm running it on 7 volts. And I do have the cutoff maxed out to get emissions well into the green. But this would produce a picture, and it responds very well to the cutoff control. Life test, no, it's not great. But it's in the green. I've seen a whole lot worse. So I am inclined to proceed with the restoration with this picture tube, and we'll see how it performs in a functioning set. If the image is terrible, it's washed out, it's a bad definition, then we can regroup about swapping it out for the all-glass CRT. But, you know, and I've only been at this maybe 10 minutes or so, so it may continue to improve a little bit. But, that's a good thing. It was a good thing. I'm pleasantly surprised. Well, it took quite a while to track down the service info, but I finally did. This is a 29G20 chassis. Not a whole lot of info in Riders Volume 3. They combined several models, so just a few pages specific to this one. Now, that large transformer-looking thing on the upper chassis, that's a filament transformer. The transformer, big one down here, is just B+, high voltage secondary, and power for the 5U4 rectifiers down there. That's it. The filaments for all these tubes comes off a transformer on the top chassis. So they split the weight between the two, I suppose. This is kind of a deluxe chassis. It has dual 6BG6 Horizontal output tubes. I think they're driven in parallel. It's not push-pull. 5V4 for a damper tube. A couple 6V6s, 6K6, 6AC7, 6SH7. So in other words, a bunch of octal tubes. And some miniature, a bunch of 6AU6s, of course. So this is it's going to be a fun project, I think. I have not seen one of these all powered up and lit up, and we get the extra fun of the high voltage up front. But for now, I got to finish off a few projects. I'll put together a parts list, order up anything I need. Very soon we'll be diving deep into this set.